I may not be able to rap, but I can rhyme. And I'm here to talk about this interesting paradigm. When you think about the war on terror, what immediately comes to mind? Desert landscapes and repaying their bombs in kind? What about the war on drugs? Maybe no good inner city hood rats and thugs, handcuffs to put black wrists together in a different kind of bind. This is all by design. You see, in order to maintain a superior, there needs to be an inferior. That's why they put us in the savage slot. It doesn't take a lot. They simply tell stories of us as the evil ones to keep you on your toes. Blame us for all the country's woes. Make us your foes. It's the fifth filter of Chomsky's manufacturing consent. You gotta have a public enemy number one. Galvanize public opinion against the boogeyman, and now the job is done. They have repressed the truth, but they didn't count on the creativity of our brown and black youth. See, in the 80s, during the height of the war on drugs, hip-hop was born. Born from the ashes of the Nation of Islam, in which they left internally torn. By the 90s, it was an international phenomenon. It grew into a tool we can use to combat the mass media, a weapon of mass culture in this ideological war. Gather around. Let me introduce 4 strategies for you to explore. Through lyrical, visual, and linguistic analysis of albums, music videos, and interviews, I discovered 4 strategies that both the Muslim and African American communities use to construct their identities, protect themselves from this Western ruse. Offensive and defensive, we got 2 of each. Offensive, political activism and mimicry to teach. Defensive, decolonization and reconstruction to remove the colonial leech, draining us of strength, pride, and fortitude. So if it's a war they want, bet. Alright? Just know we too got a way to fight, to bring our truths to the light, show the world our plight, set the record straight, make things right. Let's start with political activism to reveal the truth behind their lies. Guess that's what Mr. Gill meant when he said the revolution ain't televised. Or maybe it's televised, but the images have been compromised, teaching you who or what you need to despise. Loki asks a very important question in his song, Terrorist? He questions what is terror and who the real terror is. He talks about Western colonialism, imperialism, the military-industrial complex, prompting us to see where it all connects. He's exposing what Rose describes as the public transcripts, through embedding hidden transcripts in his lyrics. Lines like, call you terrorists if you don't want to be a colony, is trying to get Western audiences to see that they're not telling you the full story. All Muslims and Arabs are not the American people's enemy. In fact, they're not even anti-democracy. You gotta think critically. They're anti-occupation, protesting against political manipulation, angry not because you're Christian, but because they mourn a freedom briefly gained and swiftly lost. The strategy is used by Loki to encourage a rehumanization of Arab and Muslim people in every nation, prompting us to see the psychological impact theories like Clash of Civilizations has had on the Western psyche. That Muslims are victims of state-sponsored terror, and they're not the only ones who have seen the tail end of a Western power's violence and guns. The strategy of mimicry is exemplified by rapper Shaheen Samadi. You see, according to Dr. Homey, mimicry can be used as a strategy to subvert colonial authority. Samadi does this so brilliantly, through exposing white conservative hypocrisy, by making them see a reflection of themselves, a mockery. In his music video, Belong Here, he dressed like them, act like them, used their slurs. And something really fascinating occurs. Those slurs become de-weaponized, their threat, their power nullified, reclaimed, like when African-American rappers replaced that hard ER with an A. It became a term of endearment, we started to say. On Instagram, we can see this strategy in full effect. A platform on which him and his fans connect, the cover art for this track full of parody, A wanted poster complete with a mugshot and descriptors, describing him as though he's subhuman, as something who walks on all fours. In our interview together, he said he tried to get into the mindset of a bigot. See what they see, think what they think when they see a bearded man with pigment. Under race, he calls himself a sand Negro. Said he should be considered dangerous because Fox News and the movie 300 said so. See, he's Iranian American, not Arab, and with only familial ties to Islam. But his experience is important because during the War on Terror, anyone bearded with a head wrap or a foreign name was thought to be carrying a bomb. This racialized image of the Muslim terrorist committed to Western memory like a psalm. The song Belong Here mostly addresses the term jihadi, because these bigots out here keep using it incorrectly. The true definition is not about holy war. It's a spiritual concept about self-improvement, overcoming internal struggle, and more, the type of self-reflection these bigots need to figure out why they're rotten to the core. Speaking on self-reflection, it's now time for our defensive strategies. Decolonization is about not compromising on who you are for who they want you to be. Rejecting the notion that you need to prioritize your nationality in order to be accepted into society. You require my cultural heritage for your tolerance? That's a hefty price to pay. I see your motives clear as day. Divide and conquer. That's how you dismantle a movement. You get me to turn on my brothers and sisters so that I'm not focused on dissent. In 1965, Malcolm uttered his famous words, "Who taught you to hate yourself?" in Selma. Charged us with figuring out that mystery like Velma. In the same speech, he gave his analogy about coffee and cream. Said coffee, when black, is strong and so hot it lets off steam. But what happens when you integrate it with cream? It becomes cool and weak. Referring to white colonial influence entering our consciousness stream, making us meek. That's when you got Narcy saying, "No brother, not me. I'm going to embrace my heritage with glee and prioritize authenticity. F Bush's bad Muslim, good Muslim dichotomy. Because to compromise your identity, you'll never truly be free." So Uncle Toms and Arab Sambos are no-goes. It's time to re-educate. Negate that self-hate, and this ain't up for debate. We gotta stand together in solidarity. 3 strategies down, and my soul is weary. It comes with the burden of finally thinking clearly. I see the handiwork of Malcolm's white devils all around me. My mind has awoken and my lids rise, but all I can see is a world I despise, pain and destruction across my community, reflected in how we see ourselves, our identity. How do we reconstruct something so broken? That's where hip-hop comes into play. Hip-hop, higher infinite power, healing our people, keeping the self-hating thoughts at bay. Reconstruction, the last strategy we will use in this ideological combat. Something Omar Effendim has down pat. It's defensive and in some ways requires the skills of a bureaucrat. Effendim described it in his interviews as cultural translation and cultural diplomacy. He uses these skills to navigate the construction of his hybridized and hyphenated identity. Muslim, Syrian, American, to some in this country, that's antithetical. But he proves what most of us know, which is that that type of intersectionality is not theoretical. In fact, it's beautiful. The way he combines hip-hop with Arabic poetry, the way he describes his current residence, which he calls Los Shamgelis, and his family. You see, in his interview I transcribed, he said something that really struck me. He talked about how some within his Muslim Arab community were so quick after 9/11 to tell people who they aren't. They neglected to tell them who they are, which he found bizarre because there's so much positive to say. So he took it upon himself to serve as a gateway between these two worlds. Through his music, he reconciles them as one, a customized Muslim Syrian American identity that reflects the history of himself, his family, and his people's stories with authenticity and sincerity. You see, hip hop is a tool for the marginalized and melanated to help others and ourselves achieve a different consciousness. Heal the colonial scars and wounds inflicted upon us with a vengeance. When we think about these four strategies, we should root them in Osamari's theory of connective marginalities. You see, there's a universality that's hard to ignore. I argue there are undeniable similarities between how Muslim and African American rappers used hip-hop to restore their identities, damaged by the propaganda of their respective ideological wars. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a new wave of unprecedented hatred and division, affecting the mental condition of everyone who has been impacted by marginalization in this nation. Considering its accessibility, dispersibility, and utility, hip-hop is the perfect medium for resistance to stage a revolution, produce counter-narratives, and help our people process the complexity and confusion surrounding our current socio-political environment. It's almost like it's heaven sent, and that's pretty much all I had to present. I suppose to say one more thing about identity and the evil savages mass media makes us out to be. It's that it's not about that we're angry, but don't get it twisted, we are frustrated. It's more so about having Western audiences acknowledge their complicity and naivety of the experiences of those in the minority. I'll once again quote Mr. Loki, who put it so aptly. It's not about being anti-America. It's about America being anti-me.